Hello and welcome back. This is our fourth podcast and we are very lucky to have Mark Loquan, the president of the NGC, on the program today. Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, how are you enjoying the conference?
I'm enjoying it immensely.
It's so good that we see each other all the time on screens, but now we're back and we're seeing each other physically.
It feels so good to kind of see everybody again. So that's great.
Yeah. So Mark, when I think about you and I think about your story, you are like the ultimate career professional and you are the kind of person who Trinidad and Tobago is so lucky to have. You went to UWI, you graduated as a young engineer, you went into Point Lisas, you headed up, you started from the bottom, you went right up to the top, you went around the world, you came back to Trinidad. Tell us a little bit about your story. And one thing that always amazes me when I talk to you is the fact that you could have been doing anything else. You're not doing this for the money, you're way past that. But it's important for you to be back in Trinidad and contributing to the national development.
Well, I did, as you mentioned, went to UE at a time and graduated when plants were now being developed in Trinidad.
Right.
So I came in at a time when there were a couple ammonia plants.
Right.
I think methanol plants were not even built yet. So here, at least at that time, it was clearly as a chemical engineer, where do I go?
Right.
And I think that was the time when the petchem sector was growing, it was developing. It was almost one plant every year at one point in time.
Oh, wow, really?
But what I enjoyed is, as you say, you start from the bottom, you work hard, you become an engineer. And I was fortunate to kind of be posted around the world as I went up in the career, to the US, to Europe, to Africa, to Australia.
Wow.
And then I reached a point where you could retire, which I did.
Right.
I said, this after a few decades, I think it's time to kind of call it a day. But that was the same time where you have a choice to make. And the choice is, yes, do you go fishing, do you go on a hobby, or do you come back and serve a sector that was probably at the most challenging point in the whole sector. I mean, prices were down, plants were being challenged, there were no gas contracts, claims, legal issues.
Right.
So it was a time when, probably you can question my sanity for doing this, but I think it was a decision that I made where, I can give back.
And I think that's a big thing from the conversations we've had in the past, as a young process engineer, Point Lisas played a big part in contributing to who you are today. And even today, there are young process engineers graduating from UWI who are looking for an opportunity, and you are helping to shape maybe the next 10, 20, 30 years of opportunities for those young engineers.
So, as a process engineer, I decided probably like 8 years into that career, I want to do something else besides engineering.
Right.
So I combined it with business.
Right.
And what that meant. So it was having a technical background, but at the same time having a business background.
Right.
So went ahead and studied for an MBA and so on. But I think I was also fortunate to be shaped by experiences in the energy sector, in the gas business, in various continents.
Right.
And I think that experience served well. I didn't know I would come back to a gas company that I had already negotiated a gas contract
with as a customer.
As a customer.
Right. Gotcha.
Here I am now, doing the same thing for many customers in the estate at the most challenging times. So it is, you never know what is around the bend, but I would say the energy sector now, as you mentioned, is probably undergoing one of the most exciting transformations in the history.
Right.
Because as we know, there is a challenge of feeding energy to the world,
right,
which is growing in population, particularly in Asia and India.
Right.
And the question is, as an energy company, as all energy companies are finding out, how do you continue to supply energy, but at the same time supply cleaner energy?
Right.
And solve that equation.
And that must be a question as the president of the NGC that keeps you and your team up all the time. That's something you must be running through over and over.
Well, as you know, it's a philosophy that we started maybe 5 years ago.
Right.
It didn't start off going green, but it started off on the path of sustainability
Right.
because we were threatened by gas shortages and many other things, and we were starting to get into our sustainability reporting.
Right.
And of course, at that time, it meant strengthening your house. It meant building your safety foundation,
Right.
asset integrity, and so on.
Right. Right.
But as time went on and the energy world was changing to the point where climate change was becoming obvious, sitting in this region, you ask yourself, what can you do for Trinidad?
Yes.
What can you do for the region in which we're involved in? And being involved across the entire gas value chain, that's where you find opportunities. So I guess the first part of the last 5 years was becoming an integrated energy company.
Yes. Right.
As opposed to the guy just buying and selling gas and so
Right.
on. Maybe got involved in trading LNG,
Right.
getting involved in methanol plants,
Exciting.
getting involved in trading.
So one of the things I want to ask you about, because you talk about the regional market as well, and you guys have a wonderful program in Caribbean Green, right? Am I saying it right?
Carrie Green.
Carrie Green. Carrie Green. Tell us a little bit about Carrie Green and what it means. I know that's something that's important to you and something you've been driving. Tell us a little bit about Carrie Green.
Carrie Green was launched back in June last year.
Right.
And the idea behind it is that as the world is transforming, and particularly our region, the thinking was, how do we utilize the information
Right.
that we have, the expertise that we have in the Caribbean region, because we are not the only ones
Exactly correct.
that have expertise.
Correct.
And you find that people are getting involved in LNG to the Caribbean.
Right.
People are getting involved in solar projects, wind projects. And what are we doing here in Trinidad?
Yeah.
We're trying to optimize molecules, getting into renewables.
Right.
And we're all trying to do the same thing.
Yeah. Each on their own.
Everybody on their own.
Right.
So what we said last year is, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
Can we kind of form a website where if John Doe, a student, a teacher, a minister, an agency, a government,
Right.
want to see, well, what expertise do we have? Where do we find it? I think that's what Carrie Green was designed for.
Right.
So we built it.
Right.
But that would have given you the basic raw information. And I think this week we've launched Carrie Green 2.0.
Oh, nice.
And if you look at Carrie Green now, you would see, well, can we find every green project? And it's being populated. So
Lovely.
So we're getting the buy-in and written permission rather than you just having the information on your own private page.
And that's one of the challenges we have in the Caribbean, right? We already have small economies. We don't have big economies, so it's very difficult to scale things up. And when a service company like Rams or even any EPC contractor looks at the Caribbean, sometimes the projects are too small to look at each one on its own. But when we bring everything into like a central repository, it really becomes a massive opportunity.
Well, I think, the power of information,
Right.
we should never underestimate it.
100%.
And Carrie Green is that website that tells you, well, I didn't know all these projects were going on in Dom Rep,
Right.
Jamaica and Barbados, and this is the amount of electricity that was generated, and this is the project manager, and this is the one who did the funding.
Right.
But if you start to get all of that in one place,
Yeah. Everybody don't have to reinvent the wheel.
you don't have to kind of, where do I find the information?
Yeah.
Maybe I can partner with not only the people involved in these projects, but you will find us partnering with the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center,
Right.
the Climate Change Climate Center for Renewable and Energy Efficiency.
Right.
All the Caribbean agencies trying to do the same thing.
And a lot of times there's also a lot of international agencies where you could access grant funding or research funding, and those are extremely important to get projects off the ground.
Well, I think that is actually one of the triggers that we need.
Right.
So I think while we may have ambitions
Right.
to be, transform the energy mix in Trinidad and the region, a lot of it will be contingent on how well we satisfy financing.
Correct.
And to satisfy financing, it's not just about coming with your project and saying this is what you want to do. It's about having a vision that says, this is where I want to be in 2050. Okay,
Right.
that's good. That's good.
Right.
But it's also where you want to be in 2030
Right.
and 2040, and the kind of projects that make up each stage of that pathway.
Right.
And then if you can communicate that to a bank financing agency that says this is the plan you have and this is where this project fits in, you'll be more likely
Right.
to access financing that is increasingly becoming available,
At a better rate.
you know, at a
And-
better
yeah.
rate for the purpose of climate change projects.
You're right, and I think that's one of the challenges we've had in the Caribbean. We haven't been able to access financing, and certainly not at the right rates to make some of our projects feasible. Mark, when I look at the NGC and the group, you know, aside from the main NGC, some of the things that excite me is, you know, what the NEC is doing in Guyana and Suriname, what CNG is doing to transform the domestic fuel landscape in the country. But probably one of the most exciting things is what Phoenix Park is doing. You know, Dominic and his team at Phoenix Park, the acquisition of these terminals in the US. It means what we are doing now, we are taking Caribbean professionals, matching them to world-class opportunities, generating hard currency, and bringing those cash flows back to the country. What excites you? I mean, you have so many things going on at NGC, right? Like, what are the things that keep you excited over there?
Well, you know, we use our strengths,
Right,
and I would say we even have people from NGC as part of those deals.
right,
So at least when NGC is trying to do the same thing, we can do that in the same way.
right,
PPGPL is natural. We are thinking, how do we derive value across an entire chain?
right.
In the case of PPGPL, it can't be just the local environment here. When there's a world of NGLs and access to markets in
Correct.
US and Canada and Mexico, and they're doing the same thing.
And the skills are transferable, right?
Well, the good thing, the way how, and I give full credit to PPGPL, is that this is not a case where you expand and then you have expertise away.
Right,
This is a case where you expand, but a lot of the expertise, while you have operations, of course,
Yeah.
taking place in those areas, I mean, all the support services, taxes, IT, whatever you want to call it, finance, is happening in Trinidad.
yes.
So-
So you're building centers of excellence to support your global business.
That's correct. So I like the model that you know, Dominic and his team have been doing. We are learning from it too.
Right.
We will apply those practices, and I think that's one of the good things of having diverse businesses.
Right,
And you know, having the strengths of utilizing ourselves as a subsidiary.
Yeah.
But you could also position yourself as a group.
right,
So in the case of, you know, Guyana developments, you could express interest, for example,
Right.
and say, well, okay, any youth, you be the front guy, you have an office there.
right.
So you go ahead and make all the contacts. But when it comes to the I guess, concrete projects that we have to do, we utilize the strengths
Yeah,
in the group. It may be related to port and logistics,
Right.
or it may be related to gas, or you know, in the future. So I think as a conglomerate,
Right.
I can't say conglomerate, but as a group of companies,
no worries.
that, you know, I think we utilize the strengths that we have.
Yeah, and I know one of the things, Mark, that's important to you as well is the energy services sector. You know, and one of the things that I was really impressed with was how the NGC facilitated. You know, I looked at that project they did with Ghana. I think was it with Trin? I forgot the name of the company here.
Trinwell, yeah.
With Trinwell, where you know the NGC is using and leveraging its distribution network, because you guys have a network across the world, and then working with service companies in the region to help them access those opportunities that would sometimes only be accessible to North American or European companies as well.
You know, that's such a good point, because I think before the company might have been limited in its thinking.
Right,
That, you know, we are thinking inside the boundaries of Trinidad and Tobago.
right,
I think what you're seeing is the expansions in PPGPL. You even see in engineering services,
Yeah.
where during a pandemic, people weren't traveling back and forth.
right,
They were using 3D imaging and on the next side in Ghana,
Yeah.
looking at a regulator skid.
Right.
But that would have been manufactured, built down here in Trinidad, only to be installed in Ghana for a very significant purpose for power regulation and stability.
Yeah.
So I would say we can create value
Yes.
by utilizing the talent and building the services here, not only for projects like Ghana, but as we talked about before, how do we utilize the new green skills and the knowledge in renewables and wind and solar? It's going to take a combination of skills, new talent, and everything that's going to be required.
But Mark, when I listen to you, and I've said it before, Alan Chow says that the greatest, we always think the greatest assets we have lie below the ground, but it's actually the assets that we have above the ground, the people that are the greatest assets in our country. And when I look at what the group is doing, I mean, you guys are really building your asset up with your people base, leveraging those people, and really making that asset work for the organization. And it's a testament to your leadership, right? And what you've been doing there at the group.
Thanks for that, Sean. I think we have a long way to go still.
Right.
But I think you see in the last 5 years, it's been building a foundation. As I said, you still have the core piles that you have to put in a house.
Right.
Safety.
Yes.
Governance. How you do your projects. Building your people and skills.
Yeah.
And that's being driven by, you're trying to get certain business pillars done.
Right.
And the business pillars is giving that clarity to the organization. One is, secure the business.
Right.
Don't lose sight of gas supply.
Correct.
Keep your contracts going.
Yeah. Even while we take care of the long term, we got to take care of the short term.
You got to keep the wheels on the cart.
Yeah.
The second pillar might be develop the organization in the areas that I just told you.
Yeah.
The third one might be, how you do your local and international growth.
Right.
What's the strategy around that? And then the fourth one might be, how do we utilize our knowledge, our profitability, and build sustainability into everything we do.
Right.
So I think
sustainability is such an important point, right?
Right. So you don't hear language from us anymore about sponsorship. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, we sponsor many things. We still do. But I think what you hear the language of is, what's the impact?
Yep.
Who are we affected? Bocasla just got the social investment project award, but that might have been looked at as a sponsor for the last 10 years instead of, well, how many writers did you impact?
Yes. Yes.
And which competitions and which agencies they ended up with.
Right.
And
keeping track of that.
And keeping track of it.
Yeah.
So
data again, it goes down to that.
So I think the whole visualization of data, from asset integrity to safety to the impact you're making in a community.
Sure.
In HR and skill building.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really like chalk and cheese from the last 5 years.
It is. And you talk about community. I think like all of us need to understand that it's a privilege to operate as a business in the country, and that we have an obligation to help improve the quality of life of those communities in which we operate. There's no business success without community improvement. If we don't have an impact on the lives of the people, then there's no point of us being in business, right? And having said that, you just contributed $1 billion to the national treasury, right?
Well, the difference between, I would say, national gas company and a pure private firm,
right,
is that we do have an obligation. We do have a lens to wear.
Right.
That says, whatever we're doing is for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Whatever value we can create, let's be innovative.
Right.
Let's continue now to look across an entire chain. Continue to look at the Caribbean. Continue to look internationally.
Right.
Continue to partner with people and technology and so on, so that at the end of the day, it does boil down to what value do we create. What value does everyone create in the organization?
Right.
What value does your team create? And that philosophy, has to come through gradually. It starts from the top, but at the end of the day, you really like to see it from the bottom.
For sure, 100%.
And get that value being the ideas generated. I would say that's a work in progress.
Yeah.
We're still harnessing it.
I agree.
People are still asking, well, what is the green agenda about?
Yeah.
What's all this thing about sustainability about? But it's really about making a difference and being able to communicate that difference, the way how we do it
Right.
is in sustainability reports,
Right.
annual reports, and so on. But you will see that taking a shape and form that's changed over the last 5 years.
Sure, sure.
Before you might just see financial results and so on. But I think what you're seeing is the story evolving.
Right.
And you see us showing these dimensions of sustainability.
Right. No, I agree with you. And you know, Mark, as we wrap up, you know, there are so many young people who follow us on social media, and they're asking themselves these questions. Is there a future for me in Trinidad and Tobago? What is Trinidad and Tobago going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Let me ask you that question. What do you think about the future in Trinidad and Tobago? Are you excited about it? Do you see a role for your children and your grandchildren and, you know, all these other young people in Trinidad and Tobago? How excited are you about the future of Trinidad and Tobago?
You know, I've reached a point, Sean, where, as you said before, I'm a retiree.
Right.
I don't have to do this, right? So, but the fact that I'm doing it, it means that we are all here to build a better future. We are here. If we didn't believe in it, I think from where I sit, it's quite an exciting time. While you continue your focus on gas supply and all those other things, it's an exciting time to bring all the people who are on the same wavelength.
Right.
Who are doing things individually, maybe even separately.
Yeah.
To bring it together now and to say, hey, you know, we can measure methane reduction.
Yes.
We can use the satellites that are now being formed, and we can use technology that will create value. So I think I'm certainly excited to be at this point in time. I mean, it was pretty dark and gloomy when I first came.
Yeah.
Just trying to fight to get stable.
Yeah.
But I think you're at a point where we still have to keep the eye on that ball.
Right.
But at the same time, influence the landscape and make a positive difference in what we can do individually.
100%. And you know, again, there's so much. When I think about the NGC, I think about collaboration. I think about working together. You know, at Rams, we always say our hashtag is together we are better, right? So I'm really excited about what's going on at the NGC. And again, thank you so much, Mark. We really appreciate having you on. And I think your story is a story that people, they need to hear and they need to understand. And I think you and I both believe that there's a bright future for Trinidad and Tobago. And it's important that all of us play a role in helping to shape it, because we all want our kids, our grandkids, to be able to create a life for themselves over here.
You know, you hear certain sayings, and we do have a climate crisis.
Right.
It needs urgency. It needs attention. But I think if you wear the perspective that out of every crisis there is opportunity.
Exactly correct.
Then you will find those opportunities.
For sure.
And we are there now.
We are there now. Mark, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. This was Mark Loquan, President of the NGC. And you guys have a lovely day. Thank you very much.